Okay, how necessary is this for your everyday life? The fact that you can even just do it with a barbell, you're good.
What's up, fam? It is Jay Williams. I am here with
Coach Katie.
and
Coach Wendy.
and
Coach Rebecca.
today we are going to talk about one of the things that comes up often when people are thinking about joining our gym is like, is this dangerous? Right? Is CrossFit dangerous? Are some of the movements that we do dangerous or even necessary? And interestingly, I think we actually think some of the stuff that we do can be dangerous for certain people. So I thought we would talk today, or actually Rebecca thought we would talk today about like what movements are necessary, what are the things that actually help people, and what are the things that are potentially dangerous and maybe you want to avoid depending on your goals. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more. How did this come up for you?
Well, this thought process I go in circles, specifically around the snatch. And I love snatching. It's my favorite movement. However, I don't think it is necessary for all or even most people to do.
Yeah.
And I find that when I have clients, it's actually one of the last things that I teach them. In fact, I'll wait for them to just say, hey, I would love to learn that. And I remember having just check-ins with people. They're asking me about it. I'm like, honestly, where you're at, you don't need to snatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So snatching, what other movements would you say, actually open up to everyone, what other movements would you say are like potential, like do people really need to be doing this?
Handstand push-ups.
Handstand push-ups?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
What else?
Ring muscle-ups.
Ring muscle-ups, yeah.
Kipping pull-ups.
Kipping pull-ups, yeah.
Yeah, butterfly anything.
Butterfly pull-ups, yeah.
Butterfly anything. Do you mean like butterfly
Butterfly
I guess there's
push-up.
only so many things you can butterfly.
Don't catch butterflies.
Butterfly.
Don't even butterfly your shrimp, people.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can do chicken and yeah.
Don't do it.
Just don't butterfly.
What else?
Yeah, muscle ups. I mean, I would argue bar as well. Are
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah, so kipping, bar muscle ups, maybe handstand push-ups. Some of the Olympic lifting that we do. Would you say that clean and jerk falls in that?
I think a clean is functional.
Yeah.
I would say a jerk or a push press more so. I mean, learning at least a push jerk when you have to get under a weight, like you have a kid and you throw them.
Yeah.
Just to hoist them up in the air.
I love the parent who's like uncertain about whether they can lift their kid. They're like, let me try this.
Let me just
Mama had to
toss-
get under this kid. They're getting a little heavy.
Yeah, I mean, jerk as a split jerk for sure, not needed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay. So, but we do some or all of these movements as part of, our sort of regular programming. So, like, how are we reconciling this? Because I agree with you that these are movements that I would even add things like, in some cases, like burpees, and other things like that. The thing, in fact, I agree that all of these things are potentially dangerous. But essentially, that's the same as saying, like, the way I think about it is, it's the same as saying, like, hey, let's say I'm on a basketball court and I'm shooting a free throw, and the guy next to me is doing a 360 dunk. And it's like, yeah, if I try to do a 360 dunk, I'm probably going to hurt myself, right? But if I get to a certain level as a basketball player, then that might be something that I would want to do. 360 dunk maybe isn't the greatest example.
That's
but
gratuitous.
let's just say
I love
a
it.
dunk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which most people in the NBA can do, right? So at a certain level, you're going to want to be able to dunk, right? But most people who are just going out to play basketball for exercise don't need to be able to dunk,
Yeah.
right? And I think in my mind, every movement is potentially dangerous for the wrong audience.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the snatch is a great example. Like if we just kind of narrow down on that, I think for most people walking in here, it's probably not
Yeah.
the first thing they should do, right?
Well, I don't even want to say dangerous. Like
Yeah.
not even bringing in danger, because let's just assume people have the requisite mobility, like shoulder mobility to get overhead or whatever. I guess my thing is it functional? If we're talking functional fitness, like my thing with the snatch, and when I was doing programming, when we opened back up after COVID, I didn't put snatches in the program for months. And I finally had people who had been doing it for a while, like, ask for it. It was like split. I would kind of poll people. Half the people were like, yeah, great. No more snatches. Awesome. And some people are like, oh, it's my favorite lift. I love it. I miss it.
Yeah.
So I get it. Like if I lived in a world where there was no snatches in a workout, I would hate it. That being said, when in your life do you need to pick something up from the ground and hoist it overhead in one fluid motion with a wide grip? I mean, there's nothing I can think of. I mean, I joke with muscle ups. It's like, if I'm ever hanging from a helicopter and dangling there, that is when I will say to myself, man, I wish I could do a muscle up.
Well, Mufasa would have lived. He was able to do a
That's right. Yeah.
There you go.
But
But the examples of times in your life, if we're talking functional fitness, that you will need a muscle up or a handstand push up or a snatch are very, very few, if at all. And so if we're just talking functional movement, that's where I have issue with the snatch in these movements.
Yeah, I disagree with you there.
Yeah, that's great.
I think these things are all really functional. I think they're just a different expression of function, right? So, yeah, it's unlikely that you're going to, pick up something and bring it overhead in a full squat as part of your day-to-day life, right? But your ability to do that does represent a lot of other things that you're able to do, right? So let's just say, you were trying to lift a big, heavy boulder up, right, and get it onto your shoulder and get it over a fence or something, right? Well, the ability to pick something up and get it overhead in one movement is a snatch, right? Now you could also clean it and then jerk it, but essentially, like those two things are kind of functional. It's just, if you're looking at it just with a barbell and a wide grip, you're probably not going to find yourself in that position very often.
Yes. However, like you said, that is a clean or a cluster, if you will, or a thruster.
Yep.
So I do think the clean specifically is extremely functional. I mean, we pick things up dynamically, and in fact, that's when people injure themselves. They injure their back. They're picking up groceries, their child. I mean, they're trying to explode up, throwing things away. I'm just thinking about my son's preschool. I remember the dads were building like something, and they had to hoist a box up, and someone hurt their back. It was an expression of a clean, right? It was using your hips, pushing through force through your legs, more power than just a deadlift. Had that person known how to do a clean in some fashion, they wouldn't have gotten injured. Did they need to snatch to get there? No. So I guess in terms of Olympic lifting, cleans are very functional.
Yeah. No, you keep going.
Yeah, that's
yeah. So I would say, though, that in real life, you're not going to go, okay, I'm going to stand in this position, I'm going to pull my shoulders back, and then I'm going to grab this thing with the perfect technique. You're going to just try to get it up however you can. And what that means is that you're probably not going to move perfectly when you're trying to toss that lumber or, grab the boulder. And you might actually just try to pick it up and toss it over your head in one movement. And your ability to sort of train that thing will allow you to do that with less chance of injury than if you never train that thing in the first place, right? Now, in practice, most people aren't doing that.
Yeah.
Right? And so I totally get that. It's not the thing that I would start with, but I do think that it's functional. And you go back to muscle ups. I mean, it's really funny. You're not going to be on a helicopter, but you are going to be on the side of a pool. And you're going to get out of that pool without having to go to the stairs, right? Which is essentially a muscle up, right?
Yes.
You might have to hop a fence. Boom.
So our tricep dip's more functional then to get you out of the pool. Someone's like, all I want to do in life is pull myself out of the pool.
Not if your feet can't touch the ground. You have to pull yourself up and then push yourself down, right? It's like if your feet are touching the ground, great, you can jump up and then do it. But if you're not, I only know this because we did a workout where you had to do muscle ups
Yeah.
out of a pool, and it's like, wow, this
So
is
hard.
like really,
It is
really
tough.
useful. Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess the thing is this: I had a coach that was just focused on Olympic lifting for people that were 45 years and older, right? Maybe 40. I don't remember how old I was at the time. And he said that the most beautiful expression of human movement is the snatch. And so what I try to do is I try to teach everybody 40 and older to go from not being able to do this basic movement to being able to snatch. Some of them never get there. And so all the training was about like, let's get you the mobility and the strength to be able to overhead squat. And that could take years. I mean, this guy was like long term. He was like in his 70s. And he was like, this whole thing could take you years, and you're going to be doing overhead squats every day and doing all this like, other stuff to support it. Once you finally get your overhead squat, then we're going to go back to doing a PVC and we're going to start snatching. And it was just like, because this guy had won Olympic lifting medals starting at 45. He never even lifted before that. And it was really an interesting approach. And ultimately, I mean, the training that he was giving me was like 40 minutes of overhead squats every day. And I was like not into that. But it was a really interesting approach because he said, if you can do this one thing, you can do everything else.
Yeah.
Right? But he never let anybody do it for like, unless they expressed the ability to be able to do it on day one. Yeah.
And I don't disagree with you that if you can do it, it says something about your mobility, your strength, your just functionality overall. Yes, if you can squat snatch, that alone says something about you.
Yeah.
Do you need to do it in order to be functional, though? I don't know. What do you guys think?
So my thought on it is there's like a couple of questions here actually, which is okay, what is the risk of someone doing a snatch? So I think of sometime and I'm like, well, she's got shoulder injuries, like she has a tendency to overdo it. She's someone who I might say like she really wants to do a snatch, but I would probably scale her until like I was super certain that she had everything she needed to do it, and then make it really light. Like if it was a movement that she wanted to do, and that's
we're gonna bleep out that name, by the way.
Oh, my bad. Oh, sorry, we have a client.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But it's kind of like, there are definitely clients to me that or I think about like I'm starting to teach. My bad. Okay, so there are certain clients who like the risk is really great, and it would override even what I think that they might gain from it, or even their desire to do it. As their coach, I would advise them against it, and we would find some way to adapt it. Maybe they can even do a dumbbell snatch and be happy, right? Yeah. And that's totally fine. But I do think that there is this element of, even if it is not functional, there's something to be said for wanting to learn a thing. So I don't need to do muscle ups in my life now, but I really enjoy practicing them, so I'm going to practice them. And like, to me, that's a valid enough reason to want to work on a thing. I don't care if it's not functional. That's my own preference. Like, it's a fun thing for me to do.
Yeah.
And like, my number one reason for working out is because it's fun.
Yes.
Like, at the end of the day, honestly. So if somebody else feels like, all right, I want to learn a snatch because it looks fun, or because I tried this thing and I feel like athletic and kind of cool when I do it, then awesome, I'm going to teach you the snatch.
Yeah.
And make sure you have the right progressions to do it safely. But if someone has no interest in it, they don't want to do it, like, then I might push an agenda, only because, like, to Jay's point, like, I don't even care about the direct correlation of like, I need to get out of a pool, but just like the mere like learning mind muscle coordination for something that's totally different, like fosters all these interesting connections.
Yeah.
That it's like, even if you never have to wide grip a thing up overhead, like having gone through that process of like building the coordination, like getting frustrated at a thing and then practicing it over and over and over and like kind of finally getting it. Like, to me, that translates to a million other things in life, regardless of whether or not you're gonna. So like, I might push my agenda on somebody who was reluctant to learn the snatch, but could physically do it, had the mobility and the requisite strength or whatnot. If we practice it for a while and like absolutely hate it, then that's fine. Don't have to do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of how I think of it, is like, Do you want to? Do you have the ability to? In both those cases, I would say, let us go for it. If you have no desire and or you should not be doing it, then it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one
No
vote
biggie.
for not necessary.
That wasn't the question.
I never said that it's not fun and it's not something that,
The-
I would coach. The question is it necessary?
No, that wasn't the question. Rewind the tape. Do you think the snatch is a functional movement? That's what you asked.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I would say, is it necessary? I actually agree with you. I don't think
Yeah.
Yeah.
most people will need to do it.
Okay.
Right? I think when you say, is it functional? Well, it represents a much higher level of function than
Yeah.
most people are going to want to
Yes.
achieve when they come in here.
Yeah.
Got
I think
Right.
it's also you can see if you're improving, right? Like
Yeah.
saying a person who can't do a barbell, right, when they first start, and then at some point they're able to do a snatch with the barbell, right? That's always super rewarding. So I just recently had a conversation with one of my clients, and that's one of the things that he was so proud about. Like, I can actually do a barbell. I can actually do a snatch with the barbell, not with the dumbbell. So that's super rewarding. So
Yeah.
seeing like the progress. So coordination's there, like Katie was saying, right? The muscle memory is there. Them thinking, connecting things together, it's super rewarding.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I see when people get super excited about the snatch.
Yeah. And I mean, to be clear, when you say the snatch, you're talking about a heavyweight full squat snatch, right? Like that's kind of what you're talking about.
But I mean, I would argue like if the goal is, you have someone who's coming in for sport specific training,
Yeah.
for example, they will get what they need out of a clean. They don't, it is not necessary to do a snatch.
Well, depending on their sport.
Well, I mean, if their sport is Olympic lifting or CrossFit, then yes.
Yeah,
Okay. But basketball, volleyball. I mean,
Yeah.
anything that requires, fast twitch, like jumping, plyometrics,
Yeah.
then all they need to do is clean to get there.
Yeah.
So,
I would, but in that case, though, if I had an athlete that was a basketball player, I would look at a snatch as an assessment tool, probably an overhead squat. I'd look at an overhead squat as an assessment tool of their mobility.
yes.
It's like, okay, let's grab a PVC, see if you can do an overhead squat, and it's like not even close, which is going to happen for a lot of basketball players. And it's like, great, like if we don't do something about this, you are probably going to have knee injuries,
Yes.
ankle injuries, things like that. So just to be aware, like this is something that it would behoove you to improve on.
Yes.
And here's how we would approach it.
Yeah.
That's what I would think anyway.
Yeah.
Because I guess the thing is, we go into this saying all this stuff is unnecessary, and then tomorrow we're doing snatches and kipping pull-ups. It's like, so what's the point, guys?
right.
So like, how do we sort of connect those two things?
Well, that goes to what Katie was talking about. There is the learning something fun. There is like what it does say about you when you can do it. So I'm not taking anything away from people who learn to snatch and can snatch. It's great to know. It does say a lot about you, where you are in your fitness. I guess my pushback is always when I have clients who get frustrated because they're not snatching as much as the person next to them, let's just say, which you can say that about any lift, but deadlift is something we can argue that is way more important over the span of life to get better and stronger at, and they're like caught up on the snatch. And so that's when I'm like, okay, how necessary is this for your everyday life? The fact that you can even just do it with a barbell, you're good.
Yeah.
And so this is where the idea of this conversation came from. It's sometimes I just want to say, you've done enough.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if you had told me on day one that I never want to snatch, I would say, great, we can still make you powerful. We can still, make you stronger and do cool things without even touching it.
Yeah.
And then there's the people who don't have the mobility to get there, and they have this, like, there's something wrong with them. Yeah. And so it's to those people who don't have the mobility yet, or maybe they never do get to the point where they can do a full overhead squat. That does not say that they are not a good athlete or they're incapable. And so that's where this message, I guess, is coming.
So I've been reading this book called Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia, and is basically his focus is on helping you live not just a longer life. It's not really like a life extension thing, but like a health span. Have you ever heard of this? Like health span? So there's lifespan, like I live to be 100 years old, but if the last 20 years you're like in and out of the hospital and can't take care of yourself, like how good is that actual life, right? So his focus is on like how can you live the longest healthy life, right? Where you can still do all the things you want to do. And one of the things he talks about, which I think is really interesting, which I think you might want to check out this book, is called the Centenarian Decathlon. And basically what he says is like, when you are 80, 90, 100 years old, what do you want to be able to do? And so you make a list of like, here's the top 10 things I want to do. I want to be able to ski. I want to be able to, whatever, run with my kids. I want to be able to open a jar. I want to be able to live independently, et cetera, et cetera. And he says, you have these goals. Let's say I want to live independently and be able to open a jar, right? So you take those goals and then you work backwards from what kind of capability you need now when you're 40 that will allow you to do those things when you are 80 or 100. And there's actually a way to calculate this, which is kind of crazy. But, think about opening a jar. What do you need to be able to open a jar? Grip strength. Exactly. So he's like, great. So if you are going to have the grip strength at 85 to open a jar, then you need to have a certain amount of grip strength now. So you're going to lose about 10% of your strength every 10 years. So you need to be able to lift what?
Do you remember, did your parents ever have those, the things they kept in the house that were rubber to try to open jars? No. And they called it a rubber husband?
No.
Oh, God.
Okay. We lost Katie
I know
there.
some rubber. I'm just kidding.
I was thinking about that. My mom would always, pull out a rubber husband.
That's what they're called? A rubber husband?
Are you sure it was for jar opening?
Oh, my God. Wow.
I mean, maybe there was other things she did with it, but I don't know. I didn't ask. Oh, shoot. Anyway. So if you don't want to need a rubber husband,
Get on Tinder.
at age 80, increase your...
What is it called when you're 85? Is it called Tinder or is it kindling? Or I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. Here's the point. If you want to be able to open a jar, it needs X amount of grip strength. You need to be able to, for example, hang from a pull-up bar for 2 minutes in your 40s. He did the calculations. If you want to live independently, then you need to have a VO2 max that is in the top 5% of people in your age group.
Wow.
So because when your VO2 max drops below 21, then you are not able to move independently, right? And so it's really interesting. You talk about this, for some people, depending on their goals, they may want to snatch now because when they're 85, they want to, I don't know, something that looks like a snatch.
That's interesting to look into. I can curate my conversation around, let's just pretend if they can snatch now, that means that they can hold a TV over their head and move it when they're older.
Yeah.
I can say, hey, client, when you're 90, do you see yourself carrying a TV over your
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's.
But I see what you're saying. No, that's
like
good.
you want to be able to go on walks. You want to be able to go somewhere with your grandkids or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. You're going to need to do strength training 2 or 3 days a week, focusing on, hinging and squatting and that kind of thing. And then you're going to want to make sure you work on your grip strength. You're also going to want to make sure you do one super high intensity thing once or twice a week, and then some longer duration stuff so you keep up your VO2 max. It's just all these different things. And when you add it all up, it's it actually looks a lot like the training that we do.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I love that correlation.
And so, this is part of why I'm really kind of digging this book. It's one of the things he says in the book, because he spends the first half of the book talking about how heart disease is entirely preventable. A lot of cancers are preventable. Even diabetes is preventable. All these things are preventable with interventions. And he says the number one thing you can do to prevent all of these things is exercise. Mm-hmm. It's not even diet. Of course he's going to talk about diet, but exercise is actually more important to stave off all of these things and to have a longer health span. It's freaking freaking like 500-page book. He's like, if there's only one thing you take away, exercise.
Yeah.
It's like pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so like I do think that when I look at the snatch or the overhead squat or, you know, cleans, kipping pull-ups or whatever, what it represents to me is like, let's say that you're 40 right now and you're like, okay, I can't snatch. I want to be able to snatch. Well, you may not need to snatch to be able to, you know, play with your kids when you're 85, but it does represent a lot more sort of capacity and headroom that might be useful for you as you get older. You may never find yourself in a position where you have to do that exact movement, but the mobility and strength that it requires is something that you will find useful as you get older, right? But to your point, Rebecca, I don't think that you want to somehow like feel like you are less than because you can't do a movement that is essentially like the slam dunk of,
That's right.
of
Yes.
fitness. You know?
Yeah.
It's like you can do all those things without learning how to snatch or ever learning how to do a kipping pull-up, right? Now, it'd be great if you develop the grip strength and the overall strength to do a strict pull-up.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Because that may actually come up in life and it may help you longer with your shoulder mobility and stuff like that.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm closer to whatever 60 or 70 than I am to 20 at this point, right? And I've been thinking about this. It's like, how necessary is some of this stuff? And some of it isn't necessary. But if I keep focusing on doing it and getting better at it, then kind of like you, which I think you're a great example of this, it's like you don't have to train CrossFit that much to be good at it because you're really good at being strong and flexible at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that'd be a really interesting one to dig into.
Yeah. Wait, which one?
That book.
That book. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm hung up still when you said it 85 and playing with your kids. Hope maybe grandkids. Although Robert De Niro, I think, just had a.
Well, maybe that's the goal: is have kids when you're 85.
Oh yeah.
Not as a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Factory clothes at that point.
Factory clothes.
To not be the rubber husband.
That's when you have a rubber husband.
That's where you have the rubber husband? Is that what you said?
Well, okay, but actually,
Oh my
on
God.
his list, having sex was one of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At
no, I'm
85.
not arguing with
maybe
that.
Maybe not having
but like,
kids, but
So no rubber husband.
but I mean that's like legit. Like if you don't have a certain amount of physical fitness when you're 85, you will not be able to have.
Perform.
You will not be able to perform.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah, and depending on how wild you are, you might need to snatch.
Yeah.
my goal is to have a good snatch.
Next thing you know, Rebecca's like snatching every single minute of her life.
That was a double entendre.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one. I'm here for that.
I think one of the things is some of the movements that we do here. Are you with us? You guys gonna make it? Or are we gonna need to start talking about clean and jerk? Yeah? Okay.
I'm here.
All right. So here's the thing. When we write a program, the workouts that you do, they are written for somebody that is at a fairly high level of fitness. Most of them are, right? If you're looking at the advanced. So the advanced means that you're able to do a whole bunch of different things. And so what we're looking to do is challenge somebody who is already at a certain level of fitness. And so you will see things like a kipping pull-up or a snatch or clean and jerk or any of the other stuff that we talked about because it's relevant for somebody to develop more capacity than what they currently have, right? But if you're not an advanced athlete, if you're a beginner athlete or an intermediate athlete, and you're not anywhere close to that, it may not make sense for you to do those kind of movements or, do them with any sort of weight or challenge. That's kind of what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we used to call beginner fitness.
Yeah.
And the idea being you can be fit and still never touch a barbell. You're just doing dumbbell snatches. Dumbbell snatches are great. Like so there is no pressure to have to do advanced.
Yep.
That may not be your end goal,
Yeah.
and that is okay.
Yep.
You can be in shape. You can, lose weight. You can, play with your grandkids, whatever, and never make it past beginner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. This is a funny thing, though. I think part of it is the reason people do that is because they walk into the gym, they see the fittest people doing the hardest stuff, and they're thinking, I want to be
Yes.
like them. And, I did a video about this the other day. I actually think that's not a bad thing. Like, I think it's good to compare yourself to other people because then you see what's possible. But it's only good if you're willing to ask the question of what did they do to get there? How long did it take? And also not make yourself feel like crap because
Yes.
That's right.
you
Yeah.
don't have
Yes.
that ability.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's kind of what happens. People see other people, they see you doing a snatch and they're like, wow, I want to be able to do that. And so they grab a barbell because it seems really simple. Great, I'm just going to do this thing. And there's all kinds of issues that come out. And this is where your coach will say, maybe no, don't do that today. Maybe let's do it with a dumbbell, or maybe do it with a PVC, or just work on overhead squats, or just work on regular squats because you have a long way to go before
Yes.
you get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, again, like if I ran out on a basketball court and tried to do a dunk, I'd probably break myself. Maybe when I was 17, I might have a chance. Right. But like, that's, if I want to go play basketball, I have a long way to go before I'm ready to attempt that.
Yeah.
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 So,
I didn't know a dunk was that hard. I just jumped really high.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. But it's really hard to jump really high.
It's 10 feet.
Oh, yeah. Oh, shoot. That's really
Your
high.
timing's got to be right too.
Yeah, timing. Yeah, you got to be able to hang there.
Yeah. It's 10 feet. And
Yeah.
if you're only 6 feet, that means you have to jump.
4 feet.
Yeah.
And if
I
you're
mean,
only 4 feet,
yeah.
you have
If you're only
ways to
5
go.
feet. I mean, you got your arms, so that's another foot. So that's like, I got to jump 3 feet with a basketball in my hand
Right.
to,
Yeah.
to do that. Right. So, yeah.
All right. Next episode.
Solid. So, yeah, I mean, you will see the stuff come up in the training. And if you're an advanced athlete, then it's worth doing that stuff. And if you're not, then it gives you something you can shoot for. But what you're saying is not everybody needs to shoot for that. If part of your centenarian decathlon is like, I just want to be able to open a jar, it's probably better for you to, get better grip strength than to learn how to throw a barbell around.
Yeah.
So this is part of why we make the recommendations we do. So, the takeaway here is, some of the stuff we do is kind of dangerous and not useful for some people. However, we are training people that are already at a certain level to get to a higher level, and we're training the rest of the people to eventually get to that level or the level that's appropriate for them. Yeah. So, and I think that's actually great. Rather than making everything super safe and pulling back and never doing that stuff, I think it gives people more things to shoot for to kind of build that capacity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
excellent. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, we've got plenty of others. Go check out this one over here.